Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo, and I am being joined today with who I think might be our youngest guest, an amazing budding entrepreneur, Jackie Bassett. She's the founder and CEO of FD Market Company, and they are this really cool new company. So Jackie, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, before we talk about you a little bit, I'd love to hear a little bit about FD Market and what you're up to. And I also want people to know they really should follow you on social media. Your social is amazing, and the stuff that you post is more than just about products. So tell me a little bit about the business.
We are a sustainable goods shop and what we call a zero waste refillery. So you can kind of see behind me, we have a bunch of different products basically on tap where customers bring their own containers and fill up, instead of buying a new bottle every time they run out. Pretty much everything from shampoo, conditioner, lotion, to dish soap, laundry detergent, and cleaners. You can bring your own bottle. We weigh the empty bottle and fill it up. So you're getting the same products that you're already using, just without the plastic waste.
And that's become such a popular thing with water bottles, right? Like everybody kind of takes their reusable water bottles. It's what you take to the airport. It's what you bring in the car. I know in our house, it's almost like attached to people like a baby, wherever my kids go. Is it catching on in this market? Like, where do you see, what have you seen shift, especially with your generation, but certainly beyond, that is becoming popular? Like, what do people bring in? What do you see the most of? And where do you hope people start to expand their kind of mind around sustainability?
Yeah, it's definitely been a transition for sure. I think a lot of people, they're used to going to the grocery store, grabbing what they need off the shelf, checking out and going home. So it's been a little bit of like a mindset shift for people. They have to kind of be a little more aware of like, oh, I'm running low on this, so I'm going to make sure that like I wash out a container and take it to fill it up. So it's just a different way of shopping. We like to call it conscious consumerism. Like you have to be a little bit more mindful and really just focusing on buying things that you actually need and that you're actually going to use. And so we try to get people to start small and make small swaps first, rather than being like, I'm going to throw away everything in my house and start over. That's super overwhelming, and it's not sustainable at all to just throw things away. So we usually tell people to pick one product. If you know you're running low on dish soap, when that runs out, bring it in and fill it up. So that's been a really great way for us to connect with the community and be like, you don't need to feel overwhelmed by all of this. You can start small, you can make one swap at a time. And that seemed to go over pretty well.
Well, we heard about you because of a person, she's not technically on our staff, but the person, Rachel, who does a lot of our social media and works for Social T Marketing and PR, has really taught me a lot about sustainability. And that's a part of her life. And she always brings up products and ideas. Like there's this soap that's a shampoo, but it's a bar. So like there's no container and it lasts something like a year or something ridiculous. So tell me a little bit about basic everyday products that people aren't really aware necessarily exist, right? It's so easy to just order the containers off Amazon or go to Target. But realistically, you're asking people to make pretty small changes to items that they're using anyway.
So like you mentioned, the shampoo bars are one of my favorite swaps. So that's a huge way that you can cut down on your plastic waste, is just trading your bottles for bars. We have shampoo bars, we have solid dish soap, lotion bars, solid toothpaste tablets. Pretty much anything that you buy in liquid form can be made in a bar. So shampoo, for instance, most bottled shampoos, if you look at your bottle in the shower, most times the first ingredient is going to be water. So most shampoos are up to 70% water. You're paying for water. So the bars are basically just a concentrated version of everything except for the water in the shampoo bottle. And you just add the water yourself when you're in the shower. So
yeah, I mean, you're already adding water. You're in a shower. It makes so much sense. So for all the ladies of my age and older, Jackie, who have to worry about hair color, perhaps, are something like these shampoos safe for the color? Of course, that brings up a whole nother conversation, which is, what are you putting in your hair? And I know that I know my mom, and this is going back a long time, had switched to a natural hemp-based hair dye in her 40s. And it was kind of cool because it would actually make the gray look like light brown as opposed to dye. So I guess I want to just talk about hair for a second. So tell me that, is it safe? And are there other dyeing alternatives for people?
I haven't looked into a bunch of alternatives for hair dye. That's not something that I think we would ever end up retailing. I think I'd love to find like a sustainable salon to partner with and maybe do some more research on that. But our bars are one of the only salon quality shampoo and conditioner bars on the market. So that's something else that maybe we'll talk about a little bit later is greenwashing is a huge problem in the sustainability industry. So a lot of companies will see products like shampoo bars as a trend and want to jump on that, but the product that they're selling isn't really shampoo. So a lot of people will be like, I tried shampoo bars, I hated them, they wrecked my hair. But when you look at the ingredients, what they were really using was a bar of soap that's not pH balanced for your hair. That's going to leave a bunch of buildup and strip it of its natural oils and just cause a bunch of problems. Our bars are color safe, they're Curly Girl approved, and they're all salon quality shampoo that's pH balanced for your hair. And we have a bunch for different hair types. That's another something that I've seen a lot with a lot of other sustainable brands is they're like, oh, our shampoo bar works for all hair types. And there's no way that one bar can work for every single hair type. So I test every single product before we carry it, and shampoo bars, it took us a very long time to find something that we loved as much as what we carry now.
Do you carry only products that you are producing and making, or are you carrying other brands that are also in the sustainable family of goods?
We carry mostly other brands. We start locally and work our way out if we need to. So we carry a lot of PA brands. We started out making a lot of products, and then as the business scaled, I realized that that was not personally sustainable for us to do in-house. So we leave that to the professionals, and we support primarily women-owned local makers that make our products.
I love that. That's such a great model. Well, thank you for telling us a little bit more about the market itself, but I want to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to find out how you became this amazing entrepreneur with such vision at such a young age and help us understand who you are a little bit more. So everybody stay tuned. We'll be back with Unscripted with Russo in just a minute. Time to take your workout outdoors. Discover Lehigh Valley is a great resource for finding easily accessible nature trails with stunning views and challenging terrain. Whether you're exploring the Delaware and Lehigh Trail or going for a jog on the Ironton Rail Trail, explore Discover Lehigh Valley to get you started. Follow them on Instagram, Lehigh Valley PA. Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I'm being joined today by Jackie Bassett. Such an amazing young woman. She's the CEO of the FD Market, and this is a sustainability market. And in the first part of the program, Jackie explained to us a little bit about their business model and what that means. Jackie, I want to ask you a little bit about your upbringing, right? You grew up right here in the Lehigh Valley, correct? You went to Emmaus High School. And what kind of kid were you? Were you somebody who was playing around with this stuff? Were you someone making things in your kitchen? What were your hobbies? What were your interests?
Not so much like making things. I love to be outside. I was outside all the time. I have 3 younger brothers. That was just what we did. And when I was in high school, I took a couple earth science classes, and I actually ended up going on trips with the school. We went to Alaska and Utah. And I really learned a lot about climate change and the environment on those trips. So that's more what spurred my passion for sustainability, was seeing firsthand how climate change has affected some of our beautiful natural spaces right here in the United States. So that was kind of what flipped the switch for me with sustainability. And my parents always instilled in us to like be a good steward of the resources that you have and treat people and the planet kindly. And I think that's something that carried through into my adult life as well. And it kind of just, all of my passions kind of seemed to fit together perfectly.
How did you know that this was a need in our community? I mean, as you were learning about the environment and sustainability, did you do some research around the area? I mean, what were you seeing that you felt like this was a need specific to the Lehigh Valley?
I was trying to live more sustainably, and I realized that there were no resources in the Lehigh Valley. And I just felt like if I had to order a product online and have it shipped to me, that it wasn't necessarily the most sustainable option. And I had seen some of these stores kind of popping up, but in big cities, LA, New York, and I just thought it made a lot of sense. And I thought it was something that the Lehigh Valley could really benefit from, but that was how I realized there was need, because I needed it and nothing existed. And so kind of decided to fill that gap.
Yeah, you figure if you were looking for it, there had to be other people looking for it as well. Do you feel like there were other movements and things happening in the Lehigh Valley, especially during, say, your high school years, that pointed to sort of a shift in thinking, particularly of like a Gen Z, generation, because I think I've seen a lot that's been brought to the Valley in the last, particularly maybe 5 or 6 years. So, what were some of those things that maybe you were experiencing where you were meeting other like minded people thinking about this same topic?
There are a bunch of organizations in the Lehigh Valley that are really great, that focus more on like the political side of things and the conservation side of things. And so I think the piece that was really missing was the consumerism retail portion. I think there's a bunch of different aspects to anything, and one part can't function without the rest of them. There's some great organizations, Lehigh Valley Trash Pact. They focus on local cleanups. They constantly have different cleanups going on. They pick up litter, they meet at different parks. And now the names of other organizations are going to escape me. But
well, I know right in your backyard is Wildlands Conservancy, and I served on their board, and they've been, part of our show, and just seeing what they do to really conserve the natural resources, protect land and waterways and open spaces in the Lehigh Valley is so extensive, like so much more than most people. And that's right in your backyard, right? I'd imagine you're somebody who has enjoyed the Pool Wildlife Sanctuary or, South Mountain.
Yeah, so they're right here, and so is Rodale. Rodale does a ton of really amazing work. Yeah, there's tons of places to get involved with, and we try to do a lot of community partnerships. We've worked with a lot of the local farmers markets. Supporting local farmers is really important to us. So a lot of really great organizations doing great things.
When did you make the decision to actually open a market? And when you did that, I believe you were 19, is that right?
Yes.
So how does one at 19 present, first of all, to themselves and then to their parents to say, I have a 19-year-old, so I'm trying to imagine what this conversation would look like. And where did you even go to get started? Did you have a business plan? Who did you consult? What were the steps you took on this journey?
My story is a little bit unconventional. I was never like the typical teenager, high schooler. I hated school. I never liked it. I always did very well. I just didn't like being told that I had to do certain things a certain way. I felt like it boxed me in. I wasn't allowed to be creative and do what like really made me happy. So I always just never really felt like I fit in school. And then I graduated high school and took a gap year. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I would come out of that with like a super clear, like, this is my calling. This is what I want to do, which never happens. That only happens in the movies. So I decided to enroll in classes, and I went to college, and I was like, this isn't better than high school. I don't know why I thought I was going to like this. And I knew what my interests were. So I was super passionate about the environment, and my mom actually owns her own business. She is an interior designer. And at the time she was looking to move her studio out of our basement and into a physical space. So she was looking at a couple like commercial spaces, and I just like met up with her on my lunch break one day. We looked at a space and it was bigger than what she needed. And I was like, well, maybe I could open up a store in the front and you could run your business out of the back, and like we could share the space. And she was like, okay.
That's amazing. That is so,
Yeah.
what an amazing sort of fortuitous, but at the same time, vision on both your parts and a lot of kind of faith and trust by your mom. I mean, I think that's a really important, as a mom, I think it's important to note that it sounds like your parents really believed in you pretty early on and wanted to support your mission.
For sure. And they've always encouraged us. They've never been the kind of parents that are like, you have to do things this way. They're super open-minded. And I mean, they don't just let us do whatever we want, but as long as we come to them. And I think that's the difference between myself and some other people. I feel like there's definitely a stigma around not going to college, but like I always really knew what I wanted, and I always had a clear plan. And so she was like, that's fine. You have to put a business plan together, like figure out what you want to do and go for it. And at the time, everybody always wants to know how I got the money to start the business. And that's another weird story. Some lady totaled my car. It was parked in front of our house. She drove into it, totaled it. I got a couple $1,000s from the insurance company, and that's what I used to start the business.
It was amazing, right? Like what so listen,
right.
Lemon's lemonade. That's great.
Yeah. It wasn't like my parents gave me a huge chunk of money to start a business. Sharing the space was definitely I'm so thankful that we did that because we opened 3 months before the pandemic started. So having that shared expense, I think definitely helped the business to like survive and scale in those early months.
It's important to make note of you talking about not going to college. I think that there's such a huge movement, certainly in the Lehigh Valley, for there to be value around small businesses, trade schools, other ways of being and contributing and learning. So I want to just say kudos to you for recognizing what would make you happy, but what also could make a difference in our community and is making a difference in our community. There are lots of ways to do that. And one of the main purposes of this podcast is for people to hear there are lots of paths. And so I would say to you, being very young, you're on a great path. It won't be the only one you take. Right. So like the excitement is not to totally know, but to know some other things will happen in your life. So when you think about that, what is your vision? What's your vision for FD Market? And where do you see it going, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, we definitely want to continue to grow it. It's something that we've realized the community was definitely ready for, and the sustainability zero waste movement as a whole is definitely growing at a rapid rate. I think the pandemic kind of helped people to reevaluate some of their values and what really matters. And we are seeing people intentionally supporting small, sustainable, women-owned businesses. So down the road, we have a lot in store. We actually will be opening a second location in the spring. So March or April, we just secured
That's
a place.
amazing.
Yeah. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So that's our next step. And I'm so involved in that right now that it's hard to think past April right now. But that's the goal, is to just keep growing it and to provide, like, as much as like the customer experience is important to me, I also want to be a great place for people to work. We want to provide meaningful careers and just be more of a community space more than a store necessarily. So I think those are like our big goals for the next 5 years.
But I'm glad you brought that up, because this is, for you, this really is more of a mission driven vision and not so much about just selling a product. So talk to me a little bit more about that, and that concept of bringing in, supporting other women-owned local businesses, creating a place where people can have a community, a sense of community, and also creating a business that creates wages that are fair and experiences for employees that really matter. Why is that important to you? And expand on that vision for me.
In one of my accounting classes, we had to come up with like a business plan, and I pitched it. And my professor said, there's no way that could ever be profitable. And I was like, well, the goal isn't necessarily like to become a billionaire. Like, the goal is to create, like, make the world a better place. And she was like, that's not why you start a business. And I was like, okay, I'm going to drop out now, but thank you for your
thanks for your opinion.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where I was like, there has to be, like, ethical business has to be possible. And that's I just, my personality, I'm like, okay, well, now I have to prove her wrong. So that's kind of how I approached it. And I think a lot of the issues with big businesses is they're just looking to go bigger, better, faster, and make more money. And they don't really care who or what they hurt to get there. So a lot of people cut corners. They import a lot of products. They're not really worrying about where the products are made, how the people making them are being treated, what they're being paid. And so that's something that has come with a lot of extra work. And I don't want to say that it's acceptable that big businesses don't care about those things, but I see why, because all of the extensive work and research that we have to do on our end to ensure that the products that we're carrying are actually sustainable. It's so easy for you walk into Target and 3/4 of the brands have a little green leaf slapped on their label and they call it sustainable. So you really have to do a lot of digging and make sure that the parent companies are sustainable. So you need to have in a community, like, people that make fair wages, that feel supported in their careers, that don't feel like they're just a number. I've worked jobs before where you feel like you don't matter. And I don't understand how you can expect people to do a good job if you don't value them and treat them the way that they deserve to be treated. And so we have a fully female team right now, which is awesome. And we'll see how things grow, but we have a really awesome team and we're excited to grow it.
What do you want people to know? I know you mentioned in the first part of the program about what they can do individually to take a step, because I think, like you said, sometimes people feel like it has to be all or nothing. And it's kind of like with exercise, right? Or healthy eating. Like I have to never eat gluten again. I have to never have alcohol again. I have to run a marathon. But the reality is like none of that's achievable for most people. So what are the small sustainability steps and waste steps that people can take that you would recommend, like helps build a habit or just makes them aware of what they're using?
I try to just tell people, especially when they're getting started, to try to do what's called like a waste audit. So as you're throwing things away, try to just be aware of like what your trash is. So like if you opened up your trash can right now, is it mostly food wrappers? Is it mostly food waste? Like what's in your trash? And then from there, you can kind of like backtrack and be like, this is how I can cut down on that. So one of the biggest sources of waste is food waste. And so like one of my favorite tips for that is like, you don't necessarily need to go out and buy something to combat food waste. Composting is great. Not everybody has a yard or a garden or the ability to compost. Right now, I save all of our fruit and veggie scraps. So like the end of an onion, like the end of the carrots, and we freeze them and then we make veggie stock with them. So little things like that, which is where like the community center part kind of comes out, where we're not just trying to sell things, we're trying to help people learn how they can make little changes like that, and little sustainable swaps where like just tossing your veggie scraps into the freezer instead of into the trash, and then in a week making soup out of them.
Okay, well, I'm so glad you said this because that's one I wouldn't have thought of. And I'm about to make a big soup this weekend, and I have all kinds of onions and peppers and things ready to go, carrots to do it. So I'm going to make sure that I do that because we talked. I also like the idea of buying in bulk. So like buying the giant thing of rice. And again, not everyone, first of all, it's definitely cheaper to do it like that. And you're not buying all individual bags and boxes of things. So like that's one effort I think you can make.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, good. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about your love of the Lehigh Valley, having grown up here and now establishing multiple businesses here and employing people who live here. I want to learn more about why you've chosen to stay in the Lehigh Valley. So stick with us. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. Home to the Iron Pigs in Dorney Park, Allentown is a city without limits. Food, art, dance, you name it, it's got it. Allentown's historic roots are matched with its vibrant culture to create an adventure that you'll never forget. Thinking of taking a trip? Follow Lehigh Valley PA on Instagram, and you'll find attractions, hotels, and sites you won't want to miss. Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo, and we have been talking to such an incredible entrepreneur and young woman, Jackie Bassett. She's the founder and CEO of FD Market in Emmaus and about to expand the spring of 2022. So we're learning all about her vision and her mission, which is so admirable. Jackie, I have to say, you are an absolutely incredible woman and entrepreneur. And yes, I know that I remember being your age and not loving people pointing that out, but I point it out because I think it's inspiring for young people to know that when they follow their dreams and their joy and their create vision, it can be infectious for other people. And I think that's a huge part of what you stand for. Does that matter to you? Is that important to you in part in all this journey?
That's something that I always kind of struggled with. We talked a little bit about before, like especially with the college thing, people being like, there's no way that you can succeed doing that. It's more important to have stability than to like truly be happy. And I completely disagree with that. So I try to talk to as many people as I can. I have a lot of people. We have a pretty big social media following. So I get people sending me messages and they're like, I would love to do something like this. Can you like share some advice? And I love helping people realize like, even if it's not the same exact thing that I'm doing, like what their calling is and what's going to make them happy, and helping them step into that.
Isn't it incredible though, to see when you do something that matters and when you do something based on actual vision and you mean it? That's what people follow. They want to know that, right? Like they catch the fire of what you're talking about. So I think that that's what you're sparking in an entire, region that hasn't had it, and you're doing something new. why the Lehigh Valley? Like, why is this? I know it's where you grew up and I know it's your home, but why have you chosen to stay here and build a business here? Because there are a lot of other places in the country where this has been a model for a while. It probably is easier to set up sustainability in LA and other parts of the country. Why here?
You pretty much just said it. I think there are a lot of places where it's really easy for businesses and movements like this to kind of just exist. And I don't think that that's a good enough reason to neglect the areas where there are people that are interested and are ready, but they don't have the resources or the time or necessarily know how to go about doing it yet. So I just saw a huge need in the Lehigh Valley. Like you said, I grew up here and I did toy around with the idea of moving and doing it somewhere else, but I really just felt called to bridge that gap here and make it accessible to this community. And I've seen, which has been really cool, a couple other people starting similar stores in similar communities where they're like, I'm not quite sure how receptive they'll be to it yet. But and I realized that here too, once you kind of get the ball rolling, people are super receptive and they're willing to learn. And so maybe when we opened, there wasn't a huge market of people that wanted to shop zero waste, but it's definitely grown over the last 2 years, which has been really cool.
And 2 years that have been incredibly challenging 2 years. I mean, you opened, you said 3 months before the pandemic. How has the response of the Lehigh Valley been, not only in its support, but in its desire to learn more about sustainability?
Continually blows me away, especially like as a small business. The first 2 years have been, I mean, we've done well, we've grown, but it's been really tough and it's been a lot of extra work. And our community has gone above and beyond to intentionally support us, to go out of their way and share about us, which I'm sure they would have done that regardless. But I think the pandemic has kind of made them like, if the Lehigh Valley loves a small business, they let them know that. And that's been really cool to be a part of because we've built such an incredible community here.
I love to hear that. And I think I moved here 17 years ago. And I think what's kept us here, especially as we, approach sort of empty nesting and do whatever, is we love the sense of community. I feel like that, we had a very similar experience with ASR Media and the Peak TV, and just being intentional with our motivations around this type of stories we're trying to tell, and seeing the community rally around that and hearing them support something like your mission makes me excited. And I want to do the same. So I love that. What has been the best lesson you've learned so far? I mean, starting and running a business is no joke. It's right. We can tell people it is hard. You live it, you breathe it, you don't get away from it. You think about it in the middle of the night. And you have to learn a lot. I didn't go to school for business. So yes, I went to college, but I went for journalism. All I kept saying the first 5 years of business is like, why didn't anyone tell me to take like an accounting class or a business class in college? Like, what the heck? So it didn't really matter anyway. So tell me a little bit about what you've learned, what have been the biggest challenges, and what's the piece of the business that comes naturally to you?
I think the biggest challenge for me is that specifically this type of business it's a very new concept. So there's no books out there on how to open a sustainable refill store. There was a lot of gray area. So I had to do a lot of research, a lot of digging, and there wasn't really even any information out there. So I was kind of on my own in the sense that like any products that you sell by weight, like your scale has to be legal for trade. So I had to like find a scale company and have like the Department of Weights and Measures come out and certify the scale. And so there's just a bunch of things that I think as a business owner, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to have a store and I'm going to sell stuff. And then you don't realize all of the behind the scenes stuff that goes on. And I was just telling one of my employees the other day, I was like, I've been primarily working the store during the week. And I was like, I didn't realize how many other things I typically do during the week. And so like the bookkeeping and all of the management parts of the business, I like doing all of those, but it's just it's a lot to try to do everything at once.
I will tell you that for me, I did the same thing. And you will get to a tipping point where you have to really choose to play to your strengths and then figure out what pieces you need support and pay for that. Because I was doing the same thing, the bookkeeping, my invoicing, my receivables. I didn't ever love it. I'm okay at it. I did it, And it was like one of the first things to go as soon as I could afford to do it, because I felt like now somebody does it so seamlessly and they're awesome at it and love it. And it freed me up. I had no idea how much it freed me up until I let go of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, the things I'm not good at feel like this, right? Like something you're good at, you're laser focused, you get it done fast. When it's something that's a struggle, I don't know. So keep an eye on that stuff, because that's the stuff you want to let go when you can.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm super creative. I love like the marketing, the social media, the community outreach. Like I love connecting with our community. So those are definitely like what I enjoy the most about the business.
And when you're not working, which is probably not that often, what do you love to do in the Lehigh Valley? Like, what are some of your favorite things? You talked about being outside all the time. And what about places like to eat or visit? What do you love here?
I love to be outside. I'm a big hiker. I love Trexler Nature Preserve, South Mountain are two of my favorite spots. I love Union and Finch is great. And Veg Out is a vegan place in Bethlehem. They're really great too. Those are like probably my two favorites.
That's great. And what is your piece of advice for people out there, especially young people, or really any age? I don't want to attach an age to it, who are thinking about something that's their passion. What would be your advice to them? What are steps they can take to make that a more meaningful part of their life? Because you're making it your life, your career. And that's truly, to me, what is a career versus a job. But I think a lot of people, like you said, over COVID have really reevaluated. And, what would be your advice to them?
Again, it's tricky because everybody's situation is a little bit different. But I think a lot of people look at like their passions as like, well, I love that, but there's no way that I could ever like make a living doing that. And it took me a while to realize that the two can actually go hand in hand, and like where your passion, and I try to tell people like where your passion and where your strengths and where like a need in your community like meet, that's like a great place to create like a business or a mission that like is valuable to your community. So trying to figure out like, where is there a need in my community and what strengths do I have to kind of meet that, and letting the two work together. I think that's why this has worked out, because I was able to combine my strengths and a need in the community.
It's amazing. It's really amazing. Well, I love what you're doing. We are excited to have you on the show. We're excited to tell more people about your mission and draw more people in and encourage people to take that step. I'm freezing all the ends of my vegetables moving forward. I'm doing it. I'm excited about that. And I feel like there's probably some stuff I can do with my blender and juicing too with those. So that's awesome. Before I let you go, we want to do a quick rapid fire little segment that we do here. I just want to confirm you have not heard these questions, right?
No.
Okay, so ready?
Yes.
All right. What is your favorite hobby or secret talent?
I can play the guitar.
So that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
I had a teacher who he told me, he was like, I was at the time wanted to travel, and he was like, you could live in a really cool place and have like a super boring, like unfulfilling job. And like, he was like, that won't work for you. Like you need to do fulfilling work. And like, that was the first time that somebody had kind of pointed out to me that like, I won't be happy unless I'm doing work that has a purpose and that makes me happy. Where like some people are like, cool, I can like have a boring 9 to 5 and just, as long as I can go like be in a cool place after work, it's fine. But that was kind of like the best advice I had received. He was like, you just need to do something that like in your heart, is like going to make a difference.
And it's phenomenal advice. All right. If you didn't have the job you have now, what would you be doing instead?
I'd probably be like a travel blogger or something.
Cool. Which actor would you cast to play you in a movie about your life?
Only because everybody always tells me I look like Emma Watson from Harry Potter.
You do.
I guess a lot. So.
You do. She would need to be you for sure. I love it. And name one person who inspires you.
Probably my mom.
Yeah. What an amazing gift to do this with your mom and to lead the way on something so amazing in the Lehigh Valley. So Jackie Bassett, thank you so much for joining me on Unscripted. FD Market and Emmaus, please check them out. Tell us social media handles, things because you have a blog, you do a lot of things so people can follow you.
Our website is fdmarketco.com. Our blog is on there. And then our Instagram and Facebook is all FD Market Co as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today, Jackie. We look forward to seeing all the amazing things you are going to do without a doubt in the future for the Lehigh Valley and beyond.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Unscripted. Until next time.
If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.
To see more of The Peak TV, check out our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and catch us on WFMZ Channel 69.